The cell that should have stayed locked. Before we begin, hit subscribe, drop a like, and turn on notifications, because once you step inside San Quentin, there's no turning back. It started on a fog-drenched morning along the San Francisco Bay, the kind that made the air taste like salt and rust. The waves crashed against the stone wall of San Quentin State Prison, echoing like distant gunfire. Guards moved in silence, boots clicking on damp concrete. They had done this 1,000 times, but today felt different. A prisoner had vanished. His name was Malcolm Reyes, inmate number 47392, a lifer serving 2 consecutive sentences for armed robbery and assault. He wasn't the type to make trouble, not anymore. For 12 years, he'd kept his head down, working in the prison laundry, never once caught in a fight. But when the guards made their morning rounds, his bunk was empty. His cell door? Locked from the inside. No one had seen him leave. The first guard to notice, Officer Darnell Hughes, froze. "This ain't possible," he muttered, staring at the perfectly shut cell. Reyes' sheets were neatly folded. His jumpsuit hung from the bedpost. Everything was in order, except for the man who should have been there. By 7:15 a.m., the entire West Block was on lockdown. Sirens screamed through the corridors, and inmates pressed against their bars, yelling, laughing, and cursing. Inside the command center, Warden Theodore Laskin rubbed his temples, staring at the grainy CCTV footage. The cameras showed nothing, no exit, no struggle, no sign of tampering. Reyes had simply ceased to exist. "Check every duct, every vent, every tunnel," Laskin ordered. No one disappears from San Quentin. But someone just had. Detective Erin Calloway, a sharp, no-nonsense investigator from the Marin County Sheriff's Department, arrived by mid-morning. She had seen her share of prison chaos, riots, smuggled contraband, even murder, but a disappearance from a maximum security facility? That was new. "Show me the footage again," she said. The playback looped endlessly. 3:42 a.m., Reyes pacing in his cell. 3:43, he sits on his bunk. 3:44, the camera glitches for 2 seconds. When the feed stabilizes, he's gone. "Power surge?" she asked. "Backup generator didn't flicker," the technician replied. The system was fine. Only his camera glitched. Calloway frowned. Then that wasn't an accident. Meanwhile, in the prison yard, rumors spread like wildfire. Some inmates claimed Reyes had escaped through an old drainage system that led to the bay. Others said he'd been taken, not by guards, but by other inmates. The lifers knew better. Inside San Quentin, nothing happened without reason. At noon, a janitor found something strange behind the laundry facility, a small strip of torn fabric, soaked in salt water, wedged between 2 drain grates. When they examined it, it matched Reyes' uniform. Calloway crouched by the grate, peering into the darkness below. "If he went down there," she murmured, "he didn't come out alive." By evening, divers were in the water. The bay current was strong, churning up sediment and debris. The search took hours, but they found nothing, no body, no escape gear, not even footprints. And then, just as they were preparing to call off the search, a second discovery was made. In the prison's maintenance wing, behind a rusted metal panel, officers uncovered a hidden compartment filled with old inmate logs, some dating back decades. Among them was a folder labeled Project Echo, 1987. Calloway flipped it open. Inside were faded photos, men in cells, their faces blank and eyes glazed. Notes scribbled in pencil described psychological endurance tests, isolation under controlled observation, and induced silence conditions. "What the hell is this?" Calloway whispered. One of the guards recognized a name in the file. "That's Dr. Howard Flint," he said. "He used to run psychiatric evaluations here back in the 80s. Retired after some kind of scandal." Calloway looked closer. There was one more photo at the back. It showed a man sitting in a cell eerily identical to Reyes. On the back of the photo, a single word was written in shaky handwriting: replication. The warden's expression turned pale. "That cell, it's the same one Reyes disappeared from." A heavy silence fell over the room. "So," Calloway said slowly, Whatever happened in 1987 just started again. Before the day ended, another report came through. One of the guards assigned to the West Block had gone missing during his shift change. His last recorded transmission over the radio was static, mixed with a single word: echo. Now, there were 2 disappearances in less than 24 hours. As night fell over the prison, the base shimmered with cold blue light. Inside, the air was thick with unease. Inmates whispered through the walls, guards tightened their patrols, and Calloway sat in her car outside the gates, staring at the prison's dark silhouette. She played the security footage one more time, frame by frame, until something caught her eye. Just before the glitch, a shadow appeared in Rhea's cell. It wasn't a person. Exactly, more like a distortion, as if the air itself had bent for a moment. She rewound it again and again. Each time it looked the same. Calloway exhaled slowly. "No one walks out of San Quentin," she murmured, "unless someone on the inside lets them." When she returned to the prison the next morning, that same cell was sealed off with yellow tape. But inside, on the wall beneath the flickering light, someone had scrawled a message in chalk. It read, "Project Echo never ended." And underneath, a handprint, fresh, wet, and unmistakably human. The blood-stained blueprint. San Quentin wasn't new to secrets. It was a secret, built on generations of silence, deals, and invisible walls. But Detective Ramirez couldn't shake the feeling that this time, the prison wasn't just keeping a secret, it was feeding one. 2 days after Carter's death, the autopsy revealed something that didn't belong: a small metallic shard lodged near his spine. It wasn't shrapnel from a fight. It was a chip. Military grade, encrypted, and engraved with a faint serial number that led nowhere. Ramirez knew then, this wasn't just about an inmate murder. It was something much larger, something planned. Inside the investigation room, Ramirez laid out photos of every officer on duty that night. Among them was Lieutenant Harris, a respected guard with 20 years in. Harris had been the first to discover Carter's body, but his report didn't line up. The security cameras outside cell block D4, the block Carter was in, had mysteriously gone dark just 15 minutes before the incident. Coincidence? Not in San Quentin. Meanwhile, on the prison floor, whispers began spreading like wildfire. Inmates talked about a map Carter was trying to finish before his death, a detailed layout of hidden tunnels beneath San Quentin, drawn on sheets of old legal paper. No one knew how he'd gotten them, but everyone wanted them. Whoever held that map, they said, could control more than just their freedom. They could control everything. Ramirez met with Warden Daniels late that evening. Daniels looked exhausted, his voice low and uncertain. "This place is a time bomb," he said. Whatever Carter found, someone inside didn't want it getting out. Ramirez leaned forward, studying his expression. "Someone inside, meaning your staff?" Daniels hesitated. "I don't know who to trust anymore." As the sun set over the razor wire, the detective walked the upper tier of cell block D. The atmosphere was different. Quieter, colder. A place holding its breath. He stopped at cell 47, Carter's old cell. It was stripped bare except for a faint etching on the concrete wall. A number, 317, carved deep, desperate, and deliberate. 317. Ramirez ran the number through every prison record, every log. Then it hit him. It wasn't a time, it was a location code. Section 3, Tunnel 17, an abandoned part of the prison built during the 1920s, long sealed off after a riot decades ago. At 2 a.m., Ramirez and a maintenance officer, Jenkins, broke the rusted lock to the tunnel entrance. The smell of damp concrete and metal filled the air. The light from their flashlights caught on something ahead, handprints, smeared along the wall, like someone had tried to claw their way out. Deeper inside, they found a hidden chamber, lined with stacks of old inmate files, ledgers, and rusted tools. But what drew Ramirez's attention was a single metal case sitting on a makeshift table. It was labeled Project Black Cell. He opened it slowly. Inside were documents, blueprints, coded messages, and photographs of men in uniform. Prison guards, former military, even politicians. All linked to San Quentin. It looked like Carter had stumbled onto a secret operation running inside the prison, a system trading inmates, data, and influence like currency. Before Ramirez could take a closer look, the tunnel lights flickered. Then, a low hum filled the air, like a generator kicking on. Jenkins turned toward the entrance, his face pale. "Detective, someone just locked the gate." Ramirez grabbed his radio, but it was dead. Static only. Footsteps echoed down the tunnel. They weren't alone. A shadow emerged from the dark, tall, wearing a guard's uniform. Harris. His face was calm, too calm. "You should have stayed out of this, detective," he said, his voice steady, almost regretful. Carter made the same mistake. Ramirez took a step forward. "What's Project Black Cell, Harris? What are you hiding down here?" Harris's expression hardened. "Not hiding. Preserving. You think this prison runs on justice? It runs on order. You expose this, and everything collapses." Before Ramirez could react, Harris raised his weapon, not a firearm, but a stun baton modified with metal prongs. Sparks lit the tunnel blue. Ramirez ducked behind a support beam, grabbed a piece of broken pipe, and swung as Harris advanced. The blow connected, sending the baton skittering across the floor. The tunnel erupted in chaos, metal striking concrete, the echo of struggle filling the space. Then silence. Ramirez stood over Harris, breathing hard, his flashlight flickering on the cracked floor. Harris was unconscious. Ramirez knelt beside him and found a keycard clipped to his belt, marked Black Cell Secure. Ramirez picked up the metal case and ran. The tunnel seemed endless, the hum behind him growing louder. Somewhere in the dark, alarms began to blare through the prison. When he finally surfaced through a maintenance hatch, the prison yard was flooded with blue security lights. Dozens of guards swarmed the area, but none approached him. They just stared, waiting. Warden Daniels stood among them, his expression unreadable. "Ramirez," he said quietly, "we need to talk." The detective looked down at the case in his hands, the evidence that could destroy everything. Daniels sighed, stepping closer. "You think you've found the truth? You've only opened the first door." Ramirez's voice trembled. "Then what's behind it?" Daniels stared toward the dark horizon. "Something that's been running this prison long before either of us got here." The wind howled through the yard, carrying the distant echo of alarms. And from deep below, in the sealed tunnels of San Quentin, a light flickered back on, as if someone else had just woken up. The architect of San Quentin. Morning crept over San Quentin like a gray fog, quiet, heavy, and watchful. But the prison wasn't waking up. It was waiting. Every step Detective Ramirez took through the yard echoed, through silence, too deliberate to be peace. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. The metal case labeled Project Black Cell sat beside him on the interrogation table. He had spent the night breaking through its encrypted files, line by line, word by word. What he discovered didn't just rewrite the case, it rewrote the entire prison's history. It turned out that San Quentin had been part of a covert federal program launched during the late 1980s, a psychological experiment designed to control violent inmates through behavior modification trials. The files showed that Carter had been one of them. He wasn't just a prisoner, he was a test subject. The chip found in his spine wasn't random. It was a tracker, part of a failed government experiment meant to monitor and manipulate aggression. And the architect of the program? Not Harris. Not even Warden Daniels. It was Dr. Evelyn Cross, the prison's former chief psychiatrist. She had disappeared 15 years ago after a fire destroyed part of the medical wing. Everyone assumed she'd died in the blaze. But Ramirez now had proof that she didn't. She was alive and still in contact with people inside the prison. At 9:30 a.m., Ramirez confronted Warden Daniels in his office. "You knew about this," Ramirez said, slamming a photo on the desk, a faded image of Dr. Cross standing beside a younger Daniels. "You were part of it." Daniels didn't flinch. He stared at the picture for a long time before speaking. "I was young. I thought it was rehabilitation, a way to make them less violent, to fix what society couldn't. But Cross, she went too far." Ramirez's tone sharpened. "She turned them into experiments." Daniels nodded slowly. And when the government pulled out, she refused to stop. She said the data was her life's work. Just then, the intercom buzzed. A guard's voice crackled through. "Sir, there's something you need to see. Cell block D. Now." They rushed through the corridors, passing inmates pressed against their bars, whispering. When they reached the block, a guard pointed to a cell. Carter's cell. Inside, written on the wall in what looked like charcoal, were new words. "The architect still watches." Daniels turned pale. "That's her. That's Cross." Before Ramirez could respond, the overhead lights flickered, then went out completely. Red emergency lights bathed the block in a hellish glow. The sound of metal clanging echoed down the hall, cell doors unlocking one by one. The system was being overridden. From the upper tiers, inmates shouted and ran. The prison descended into chaos. Over the alarm, a voice came through the intercom. Female, calm, deliberate. "You should have left it buried, detective. You don't know what you've unearthed." It was her. Dr. Evelyn Cross. Ramirez grabbed his radio. "Where are you, Cross?" A pause. Then she replied. "Right where you left me." Ramirez froze. The medical wing. The one that burned years ago. He ran, sprinting through the corridors with Daniels behind him. The deeper they went, the more the air filled with dust and smoke from the old fire scars. The wing was sealed, but the door now hung half open, the lock cut from the inside. Inside, the walls were blackened, and the air smelled of decay. In the center of the room stood a flickering monitor powered by an old generator. On the screen, Dr. Cross appeared, older now, her hair gray, her face half-lit by the screen's blue glow. "Welcome back to my lab, detective," she said softly. "Do you see now? Carter didn't die for nothing. He was trying to warn you, but the system wouldn't allow it." Ramirez looked around the room, at the operating table, the surgical tools, the restraints. He noticed a faint outline on the wall, a hidden door. He pushed it open, revealing a smaller chamber behind it. Inside were dozens of sealed containers, each labeled with an inmate number, and each containing a small metallic chip. "My work," Cross continued. "They called it unethical. But I was building something pure, a prison that controls itself. No riots, no violence, no chaos. Order, through obedience." Ramirez shook his head. "You're insane. You turn them into machines." "Machines behave better than monsters," she whispered. Daniels stepped forward, fury in his voice. "You destroyed lives. You murdered them." Cross's expression didn't change. "I saved this prison. You just didn't understand the cost." Suddenly, the generator sputtered. The lights dimmed. From the shadows behind Ramirez, a movement. A figure in a guard's uniform stepped forward. Harris. He was still alive, his face scarred, his eyes vacant. A chip glinted just behind his ear. "He's my proof," Cross said. "My perfect subject." Harris raised his weapon, robotic, unblinking. Ramirez aimed his gun. For a moment, the world froze, 3 lives tangled by one nightmare. Then, a gunshot tore through the silence. Harris fell. Cross's monitor shattered. Daniels lowered his weapon, his hand shaking. "It's over." But it wasn't. The monitor crackled back to life, showing live security feeds of every corner of San Quentin. One by one, inmates in their cells began to convulse, their implanted chips activating. Cross's voice, distorted but still calm, filled the speakers. "You can't stop what's already running. San Quentin is alive now, and it will outlive all of you." Ramirez grabbed the generator's cables and ripped them free. The lights went dark. The voice cut off. Silence returned. Hours later, the sun rose over the prison again. News crews surrounded the gates. Warden Daniels resigned. The FBI took over. But they never found Dr. Evelyn Cross's body. As Ramirez left the prison, he looked back one last time. Through the fog, he swore he saw a faint light flickering behind the windows of the burned medical wing. A soft hum followed, low, rhythmic, mechanical. San Quentin was still breathing. Outro, dark, suspenseful tone. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Subscribe because the next case might be closer than you think.